Today is Friday, May the 15th, 2015. The time is 10:35, and we will call this meeting of the Texas Appraiser Licensing and Certification Board to order. We will begin with our pledges of allegiance. If I can ask Mr. Walker Beard to lead us.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the
Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee,
Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Next item on our agenda is roll call.
Chair Danny Wycliffe.
Present.
Lori Fontana.
Present.
Mark McAnally.
Present.
Walker Beard.
Here.
Clayton Black.
Present.
Patrick Carlson.
Can you be prepared to make a
Jesse
motion?
Barba. Brian Cadden.
Here.
And Jim Jeffrey.
Here.
Thank you for the roll call. We look for a motion to approve the absences of the two board members.
I move to approve the absences of Mr. Barber and Mr. Carlson.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Both of those board members have been in contact with the chair. Mr. Barber's had travel difficulties because of the weather. Mr. Carlson had a meeting that was unavoidable. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Takes us to agenda item number 3, discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of John Dory as a mentor.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. Troy Bollier, Acting Director of the Standards and Enforcement Services. You have in your materials behind tab number 3 an application for Mr. John Dory. And Mr. Dory is already a PIC member, but has since desired to be a mentor. And so he has applied for that, and staff has reviewed that materials and recommends approving his application to serve as a mentor.
Thank you, Troy.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the application as a peer investigative committee member of John Dory.
No, mentor.
Mentor, sorry.
We have a motion to accept Mr. Dory as a mentor. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
I'm sorry. Mr. Jeffries will give you credit for that second.
Madam Chair, I want to ask Troy a quick question.
Yes, sir.
And it has to do with the mentorship program. And as you administer the penalties of education and mentorship and so on, and some of those it says in the mentorship it says 2 hours or 3 hours of sales comparison approach, 4 hours of this, and you have specific hours of required mentorship. My question is, it's easy for me to understand how when it's classrooms, you get a certificate of attendance. How do you evidence through the mentorship program participation in that training? Not training, but what is that training? How do you evidence that? Just by they just sign an affidavit that they've done it, or
sort of. The packet of materials that they receive includes a certification form, if you will, that the mentor signs after they've completed, and it just certifies that the appraiser and the mentor met and they completed the required hours and the required topics. And then in addition to that, there is another form. There's a mentor-mentee guidelines form that we have them both sign that just outlines the process and their respective obligations. So both of those are submitted when they complete the mentorship.
And so the instructor signs, the appraiser signs. Not to belabor that, but you know, as we do courses, there's core content, and you know exactly the subject material, and it's approved by the AQB, and there's all this process to determine the subject matter content. How do you determine that as an investigator, that these mentors are being compliant with what you anticipate that the kind of instructions they're giving?
Well, you know, they do have the mentor-mentee guidelines, which spell out the obligations, and they do obtain a copy of the agreed order. Sometimes they will ask for a copy of the investigative report as well. And sometimes we field questions from the mentor, sometimes the mentee as well, you know, just questions, you know, trying to clarify that. But you're right, it's not like
really
an
spelled out.
Yeah, it's not like, you know, education in that it's spelled out in a syllabus or somewhere definitive.
And my last question is geographic competency. Mentorship is statewide, not geographic competency, is that correct?
The mentors, when they apply, have the ability to identify in their application, and I think if you look at Mr. Dory's,
He's indicated statewide
yeah, he's
mentorship.
indicated statewide, but it's quite frequent for people to say only the Dallas Metroplex area, or only Central Texas, or just Houston. So they have that option of limiting their the scope of their mentorship practice, if you will, to those areas that they believe they're geographically competent.
Yeah. So an appraiser from El Paso could be being mentored by a person from anywhere in the state if they've applied for statewide mentorship?
They could, theoretically, right now, as long as, of course, that mentor is taking the onus of saying, yes, I'm going to satisfy competency. And then the other thing I'd add is that with mentorship, sometimes it's not necessarily issues that would implicate geographic competency, but maybe issues in USPAP that are more generic. For example, record keeping. Mm-hmm. So you could, you know, have a real issue with record keeping and have a couple of hours on that, and not really be addressing any specific market. So it depends.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
Floor is open for any additional discussion. If not, we have a motion by Ms. Fontana, a second by Mr. Jeffries. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Takes us to agenda item number 4. This is the opportunity on our agenda for members of the public to address our board for non-agenda items. I have no request at the dais. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board on something that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move to agenda item number 5, executive session to discuss pending litigation or receive advice of counsel pursuant to Texas Government Code 551071 and personnel matters pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074. The time now is about 10:40. I expect that I would hope that we would return in about a 30 to 40 minute window of time. Time is now 11:25, and we have reassembled from executive session. We have almost all remaining board members, or all board members in attendance returning. We'll expect the return of Mr. Black shortly. We are on agenda item number 6, with the consent agenda, the ratification of the official record. Well, actually, I could take the entire consent agenda, which is what I was attempting to do. Is item number 6 the only item on the consent agenda? It appears to me 6 and 7. Okay, so agenda items number 6 and 7 are open on the consent agenda for potential action. Your choices are approval, incomplete,
Madam Chair.
or if you have
Madam Chair.
questions.
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair.
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Madam Chair.
Mr. McAnally.
I move that we accept agenda items 6 and 7 as presented on the consent agenda.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Carries us to agenda item number 8, which is the contested cases.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. Troy Bollier, Acting Director. Agenda item number 8 is a proposal for decision from the State Office of Administrative Hearings, and it is an application denial case in connection with an experience audit. You can see from Judge Card's decision in your materials that he is recommending upholding the denial of, and I may be pronouncing it wrong, Mr. Balagan's application for license. And that's the recommendation of staff, that you deny the application.
Thank you. Is the respondent in the audience or any representative of the respondent? Seeing none, the floor is open for a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendation of staff for agenda item number 8.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Beard, second by Ms. Fontana. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Takes us to agenda item number 9, committee reports. Report by the AMC Advisory Committee.
The AMC Advisory Committee met on May 15th. That's not right. No. I'm sorry. April the 24th. Oh, gosh. My head. Not enough coffee. 2015. Attendance were the myself, the board member, and committee members Sarah Oates and Lawrence McNamara. There were no other board members. Staff was in attendance. No public attendance. No public attendees were at this meeting. The committee pretty much discussed several items, including the possible changes to the definition of review and the scope of work in the TALCB Rule 159.155. This is something that the committee had vetted prior, and we're looking at that again and anticipate a lot of work on that one particular item. We also passed for adoption a penalty matrix, which we'll be presenting, and I'd also like to commend staff. That was some work there. I think it came off of some really good work on the enforcement side, carrying through for continuity through the AMC, so thank y'all very much. That was some really good work, and I appreciate it. And that's it. We have set another meeting for the AMC committee for July the 24th, 2015 at 9:30 a.m.
Thank you, Ms. Fontana. Any questions of the AMC committee? We'll move to the report by the Budget Committee. Mr. Beard?
Madam Chair, the Budget Committee met this morning at 8:30, and in attendance were myself and Clayton Black that are on the committee, and also in attendance was our chairwoman, Jamie Whitcliffe, and we'll be getting a complete briefing on that budget proposal later in the meeting. As our policy reads, this is our preliminary review of the budget, and it will, in our August meeting, be the final approved budget that will be effective September 1 of this year. But we didn't have any, the presentation answered all of our questions, and we will look forward to hearing that presentation again later in the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Beard. Agenda item number 11 is report by the Education Committee. Is there a report? Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Education Committee met on May 7th by teleconference, and the committee members in attendance were myself, Jim Jeffries, Walker Baird, and Brian Padden. We had no other board members in attendance. We had a number of staff people assisting us in attendance, and also we had 3 members of the public in attendance on that teleconference, they being Joe Waller, Teresa Walker, and Bobby Chris. The Education Committee took up the issue of a voluntary appraisal trainee review program, and we discussed that at some length. And we asked the staff to bring back a recommended structure for the voluntary appraisal trainee review program for discussion at our next committee meeting. There was a recommendation from, I believe, the Enforcement Committee to look at the criteria and see if we could expand the criteria for mentor classification, folks that want to do mentor work with the board. And we reviewed the existing criteria and recommended that we add the additional criteria to perhaps expand the number of mentors that we have by including those folks that are qualified to teach the courses for the appraisal organizations that are the voluntary organizations that are a member of the appraisal industry, for instance, the Appraisal Institute and other organizations. So we are recommending that to the Enforcement Committee that we add the criteria if those folks that are teach those classes would also be qualified, in addition to all the other necessary qualifications to add teaching those courses. And lastly, we heard a report on the new appraisal trainee required course that's now in place. And we heard that we presently have 3 approved online providers for the Appraiser trainee sponsor course, and 1 provider has been approved for an in-house classroom course. And so we hope that those offers will expand in the future, since we'll all, or many of us, will be needing to take that class. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the work of all the committees, and especially the education. You've got a lot going on over there right now. Takes us to agenda item number 12, report by the Enforcement Committee.
The Enforcement Committee met twice since the February meeting, once on March the 25th and again on April the 24th. In attendance were the committee members, staff, and we did have a public member in attendance, Joe Waller, on behalf of FACT. As you heard from the education's report, the committee did discuss qualifications for appointment as mentors, and we did ask the Education Committee to give us some information as far as what they thought might be some good qualifications for us to consider, so thank y'all very much. We also discussed possible changes to the policy on board orders and proposed definition of real estate appraisal experience, which we will be seeing later on in the agenda for consideration. And I'd like to note that the committee unanimously recommends the board to adopt the proposed changes to that policy. We did set another meeting for July the 4th, 2015 at 1:30 p.m.
July the 24th.
What did I say?
It sounded like the 4th, so.
Oh, I will not be here July the 4th. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have just a small item. It looks, you have your TLC board members, you're still showing Mr. De La Garza versus Jim Jeffries as just on the memo, and I have no idea how that happened, but.
It's the wrong copy of the letterhead, that's all.
Yep, that's all.
I think
Good catch,
Mr.
Mr. Good catch, Mr. Beard. So, any comments or questions of the Enforcement Committee? Again, thank you each for your individual service on those subcommittees. It does help us move things along efficiently, and I know they require extra work on your part. I appreciate your participation. Which takes us to agenda item number 13, staff reports.
Madam Chair and board members, Doug Oldmixon, the Commissioner. First of all, let me say thank you very much for your continued service on this board, and I really do believe that that the board has, in some ways, come through a kind of a formation patch and has hit a stride. Knows where it's going and has a plan on how to get there. So I really do commend you for sticking with it to get to that point, and I look forward to continuing to support the policy-making work of this body. Staffing update, of course, I know I made you aware that on Monday evening, Mark Murnack, the Director of Standards and Enforcement Services, resigned. And on Tuesday morning, I appointed Troy Bollier, who's the senior attorney in that division, as the acting director. And we will have some discussions. I met with the staff also on Tuesday morning to talk about what the future looks like. And I'll be continuing that and making some decisions about what the staffing needs are for the division. We also, on Monday, we'll have a new person starting, a legal assistant, a very experienced legal assistant by the name of Robin Dilworth. And so she'll be introduced at the next, at your next meeting in August. Today you'll hear some technology updates, and I'll leave most of those to Steve. Some of them have budget implications. I'll talk about that when I present the budget later on. You'll also be hearing our annual review or report that we do on the demographics of the profession in Texas compared to the demographics nationally. And Tony Slagle will be presenting those. I believe they're in your materials as well. Other items on the agenda, you have heard from the various committees that gave their reports, that have recommendations, and a lot of those items, amendments to the board order policy, I think was particularly helpful, clarification. We will also have a report from Tony Slagle, our government affairs, on the progress that the legislature is making, or lack thereof, depending on how you look at it. We have a bill pending, and he'll talk about that and a few other things. There was also a request to give a brief report on the building feasibility study process, and so I'll be doing that today. And lastly, I wanted to let you know that we are we have firmed up with the appraisal subcommittee their biennial visitation. So hopefully it'll be Texas Rocks Part 2. But that's going to be on February the 19th. So that is a preset meeting date for us in February as a body. So they'll be here for the 3-day period to complete that, and it will be Jenny Tidwell as the lead evaluator as she was last time. So unless you have any questions for me, I will turn it over to the rest of the staff for their regular reports. Oh. Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am Kristen Warman, your General Counsel, and I just wanted to provide you an update on some changes to federal law. On March 20th, 2015, the AQB adopted the 5th exposure draft, amending the 2015 real property appraiser criteria as it relates to the issue of background or criminal history checks for appraisers. The basic requirement that the AQB adopted is that state regulatory agencies must ensure that applicants for a real property appraiser credential possess a background that would not call into question the public trust. They did provide some general guidance on what that means to the states. I want to assure you that currently the board's practice is to ask all applicants if they have been convicted of a crime, placed on probation or deferred adjudication, or have any criminal charges pending against them on both the initial application as well as the renewal applications. If the applicant answers yes, the board asks for additional supporting documentation to evaluate. And regardless of whether the applicant answers yes or no, the board currently conducts a criminal history check through the Department of Public Safety on all initial and renewal applicants. This is a statewide check based on name, date of birth, and social security number. Given our current practice and the AQB amendments, the broader policy question for the board is what else beyond our current practice should we do? If the board's housekeeping bill is signed into law, the board will have authority to conduct national fingerprint-based criminal history checks through the FBI. Any decision by the board to implement such checks would be preceded by committee meetings that allow for broad stakeholder input, followed by a recommendation to the full board. And if the recommendation is to adopt rules to implement those fingerprint-based checks, then that would follow the normal rulemaking process, including publication of any proposed rules, a comment period, to allow for additional stakeholder input before a final decision is made by the board. The second update that I wanted to provide to you is with regard to the adoption of federal rules regarding the regulation of appraisal management companies. The federal financial institution regulatory agencies have announced, but not yet published, final rules for regulation of AMCs. These rules are being adopted under Section 1473 of the Dodd-Frank Act and Section 1124 of Title IX of FERIA. The rules establish minimum requirements that a participating state must follow in registering and supervising AMCs, which would allow an AMC to provide appraisal management services in connection with federally related transactions within the state. As a participating state, Texas will have 36 months from the effective date of these rules to review our laws and rules to make sure that they are in compliance with the federal rules. The current practice of this board appears in Chapter 1104 of the Texas Occupations Code and Chapter 159 of the board's rules. Many of the requirements in place already comply with many of the requirements set forth in the federal rules. So there's not a rush. We will have plenty of time to review our laws and determine if changes will be required. And if necessary, we would be able to present any required statutory changes to the legislature in 2017. We expect the AMC Advisory Committee to review these final rules along with staff in the upcoming committee meetings to determine what, if any, changes might be necessary. Once the changes have been identified, we expect the committee to hold meetings with stakeholders and receive stakeholder input to develop a recommendation for the board regarding any changes that would be needed. And if the board's bill is signed into law, the AMC Advisory Committee will be expanded with 2 additional members. So we'll have extra help for the workload.
Other questions?
I have one question. The DPS check that we do currently, is that what you said?
Correct.
How does that, anybody that's applying, you have a way to just ask them online to do a background check, or how does that implemented?
Yes, there's an electronic database that we submit the request to directly to DPS for them to check.
And they just feedback, nothing of record, and away you go, or something of record, or whatever the results are.
Yes, they just send the results back to us, and that could be nothing or it could be something, and then we would go through and identify to make sure that it is in fact that individual that is the same person as our applicant.
Madam Chair, may I ask one quick question? I'm sorry, I was writing something down when you've just finished. There would be 2 more slots for what? The board or for a committee or what?
The AMC Advisory Committee will be expanded.
Got to. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Thank you for asking that, Mr. McAnally, because I was curious, is there some qualification or some criteria? They're going to be public members? Are they board members?
There will be 1 public member and 1 more industry member.
Good. Thank you. Are there other questions? Thank you, Ms. Worman.
Good morning, Lori Deanda, Director of Reception and Communication Services. Before I refer you to the C1 report, I would like to introduce you to our new team member, Amy Jasper, who was hired as a program specialist. She was born and raised in the Texas Panhandle and later earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in government from Angelo State University. She moved to the Austin area in 2007 and began her employment with TREC in September 2008. Prior to joining the Reception and Communication Services Division, Amy was a member of the Education and Licensing Services Division as a team lead. She had been the TALCB licensing specialist with a primary focus on appraisal management companies and individual appraisers. Amy played a pivotal role in the testing and implementation of the processes for appraisal management companies once registration was required in Texas. She loves to spend time with her family and enjoys traveling.
Welcome.
So please refer to the C1 report. For the month of March, we received a total of 21,443 calls. We assisted 286 walk-ins and responded to 7,412 emails within one business day. I also would like to report a change that took place in RCS that made an enormous improvement in completing calls at a much faster pace. In mid-February, we had the internal instant messaging feature installed in our systems, and in the month of March, we were able to assist over 3,300 additional calls than we did for the month of January, and almost 2,600 additional calls than the month of February. This feature has also helped the level of customer service. That concludes my report, and I'm available to answer any questions. Okay.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Good morning. Gwen Jackson, Director of Education and Licensing Services. With your permission, I'd first like to introduce a new team member for us for the ELS division. I'd like to introduce you to Becky Jarman. Becky has been promoted to the position of TALCB Licensing Specialist 4. She has assumed Amy's responsibilities and is our new team lead in charge of the appraisal management companies and appraisal application and renewal processes. Becky was formerly employed with the Texas State Health Department, but was hired by TREC in 2006 as an education specialist, where she performed education evaluations and was later promoted to evaluate broker education and experience. Today, Becky is celebrating her 9th anniversary with the agency, and we're glad to have her on the TALCB team.
Welcome, Becky.
Thank you, Becky. All right, our first report is the active certifications and licenses. As of March, you'll see there that we have a total of 6,073 active appraisers, which is an increase of 79 over March of last year. There are 854 temporary out-of-state appraisers and 142 inactive appraisers. If there are no questions, we can move on to the appraisal management company report. A revision to that report was provided to you this morning in place of the one that was received in your meeting material. So the one that's here has been updated. Okay. We were able to update this report as of April, and it has been revised to provide totals at the bottom of the page for registrations that have been surrendered or revoked, and it now includes a line item for those that have expired. 216 AMCs have registered since March 2012. 11 have since surrendered their registrations. 3 have been revoked, and 19 have expired. This brings our current total to 183 AMCs. If there are no questions, please now direct your attention to the L1 report. As of March, we received and processed over 521 original appraiser applications and issued 499 licenses. 1,759 appraisers have renewed their licenses, and 25 were reinstated. Compared to this period last year, there's a 7% decrease in total applications received and a 5% increase in renewals. If there are no questions, we'll move to our reports for examination activity. The year-to-date results are provided, as well as our examination activity for the month of March. The very last report provides a comparison to this period last year. So far this fiscal year, the pass rate has dropped somewhat for each appraiser type, and our overall appraiser pass rate is at 56.5%, which is 2.5% lower than this period last year. If there are no questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Gwen.
Thank you.
Good morning. Steve Spropoulos, Director of the ITS Division. Today I will give you an update on some of our progress that's been made over the last quarter, and then we'll go through the report that's shown on the overhead. So since the last meeting, we had the website that launched, and I just was wondering if you guys had a chance to take a look, if you had any positive feedback on that, or...
We have. I'll tell you, from someone who uses it quite a bit,
Yep.
The learning curve has been a little fun. So some of the feedback I've gotten from my constituents is, golly, I can't figure out where anything is. Probably that's because we used the old one for so long. The other comment that I've had has come from people who have been trying to reach out to board members. It's very difficult to find the board on the current. In the old version, you could go to home and there was an easy transition. Okay. Right now, when you begin to look at the structure of the organization, the hot button, if you will, goes to the commissioner's resume, which is great, and I think that it should stay there, but I do think there needs to be some way for the consumer or the appraiser trying to reach out to a board member with questions be able to find a way to get there. So if you'll just look at that from a generic standpoint, it's embedded about 3 steps in. It's hard to find, is the comment that we've gotten. Other than that, looks great. Once you get used to it, it's really a lot of fun. I think it looks so much better than, of course, what we were working with before. And I will tell you that I did brag at the TREC meeting that we beat them at something, which it doesn't happen very often. So good job overall.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Yes, ma'am, I do. Thank you very much. It looks great, but the travel on it is really, to me, it was really good. I haven't really heard anybody else say anything about it, but for me, I could travel on it very well, so thank you very much. I like the fact that the pertinent information is on every page, so they're not having to go to real big items and find it. I would like to make one request. Sure. Would you please review all the contact information for the board members? I have found that Mr. Barba's email address, I believe, is not correct. And I just want to QC that a little bit, because I did know that there was one. It seems like somebody's telephone number was not correct either.
Be sure to correct that.
So if you could just review it,
absolutely,
update that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Great.
Yep. I was just going to ask. I've used the website as well, but I just, I'm going in and getting out for a specific reason. I haven't really traveled all over it, but I just remember the prototype rollout that we have, and I don't know if you're still working and incorporating things by phases, but there was going to be a feature about how to find an appraiser in a specific area of the state, and the little pinpoints and all that would show where they were. Is that available now, or is that something that's still coming in the future?
That's something that we're working on.
Okay.
Yeah. So we continue to improve some of the features, especially in the search, and we'll make those corrections that were noted and get that fixed. So the other updates I had for you from a technology standpoint, we installed in the last 3 months, we installed a new firewall, which was one of our older pieces of equipment that we were replacing. And we've also increased the size of the bandwidth for our connection to the outside internet, which will have a positive effect of allowing more people to connect to the website concurrently and access our online services to process their renewals. Ever since we made that change, we noticed that the availability of the website was increased, and that the calls to the RCS division for issues connecting and issues getting to the services that the constituents or the licensees needed was much reduced. So that has had that positive effect. And also, I would like to say that we have hired a new programmer that's going to help us with development. So that's something that I planned to do. It was a long process to get this person hired, but he will start on Monday. So I will be introducing him at the next board meeting. And we're looking very forward to his presence, so he can help us move our projects forward from a web development perspective and some other development that we need in the ITS division. If there are no questions about those updates, I will go through the report that you see on the overhead. So we had a notable increase in total pages viewed for our website, partly because of the fact that it's a new website and everybody kind of wanted to see what was going on there. And we also had an increase in the total monthly unique visitors as compared to the prior 3 months. Our online percentages for applications has gone up, and our online percentages for renewals have also gone up as well. Are there any questions about those statistics? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug Mixon, the Commissioner. I'm filling in for Melissa Huerta, who is attending a funeral, family member funeral today. If you will look at page 102 of your materials, this is the budget status report for the board, comparing our current level of expenditures to the budget for the year. And you can see the areas in most of the areas we have spent less and collected more, so that puts us in a very positive light. The rent has been paid for the year, so that's why that shows at such a small percentage. Versa annual maintenance has also been paid for the year. We have far fewer with the implementation of the with our program using mentors and allowing folks to resolve their issues through education. We have a lot fewer cases that go to SOA, so those expenses are down as well. And then, of course, we allocate our contribution to general revenue, so that one's always right on target. We have collected a little more than we anticipated in license fees, and then in AMCs, we had more than we anticipated. I don't think we actually budgeted for any new AMCs, and we've had 12 new applications this year, so that's a great thing. Any questions about that? And I apologize, because the very first thing I was supposed to do was introduce a new team member. So Karen Skrabarczyk. Karen is our joined the agency staff and support services as our budget analyst starting on May the 1st. And we are so happy to have her because we've been without for a while. She has over 22 years of state service in public finance with experience in financial analysis, loan underwriting, contract management, and financial compliance. She earned her Bachelor of Business Administration in Finance, how about that, from Baylor University. Go Bears. In her spare time, she enjoys volunteering on school advisory committees. She also coaches First Lego League Robotics, so you be careful. Be a drone headed your way. And chauffeuring kids to various sporting practices and events. Thank you, Karen, for joining us.
Welcome, Karen.
Commissioner?
Yes.
I was about to say there's been a lot of change going on in your organization, both internally and with external.
Okay, I'll be happy to. There's actually, you know what? You're absolutely right. When we update it on our internal website, I should send you guys out a new chart with the also the new direct phone list. So thank you for that reminder. On page 103, the last report for this division, this is just the investment of our current reserves, and they're invested in Treasury notes. So that just shows the individual investments there. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Otherwise, we could put Karen on the hot seat. She's only been here for 15 days, so maybe you could spare her that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, board members. Troy Bollier, Acting Director of the Standards and Enforcement Services Division. You have the enforcement reports in your materials beginning at page 104. And the first sheet there is regarding complaints against appraisers. And basically what you can see is that we're closing more cases than are coming in. We currently, at the bottom left of the document there, you'll see we have 162 total open cases. And like I was saying, we've closed more than we've opened aggregately and individually in terms of audits and complaints. 231 closed and 210 that have come in. The next slide regarding complaints with appraisal management companies. Not much change here. There's a total of 3 open. You can see on the bottom left-hand corner. And so far we've had 4 that have been opened and 3 closed. So not a lot of complaint activity on the AMC front. The next slide regarding total open regulatory complaints and RFAs. Since our historic highs in the wake of the financial crisis, we have cleared out the backlog. So 2008, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are pretty much resolved. 2 notable exceptions. There are 2 requests for assistance, and you may remember those are requests from law enforcement. The agency is part of the Residential Mortgage Fraud Task Force, and we are at times asked to assist law enforcement. So there are 2 stragglers, if you will, one from 2009, one from 2012, where there's still an active criminal prosecution that's obviously beyond our control. So we're in regular communication with them, and as soon as their case is concluded, we'll be able to close that out. In terms of 2013, quite a number of those 9 remaining cases will be addressed today. There's 3 on the agenda. And then there are a number of other ones that are in process, going to SOA and such. And then, of course, 2014 and 15, we're actively working those. The next slide you can see is the cases that are at least over a year old. And the one thing I would point out on here, you can see the first row there of agreed orders and PFD received. That's obviously as of the end of April. And just to recognize that number is a little bit low because, as typically occurs with negotiations and such, it's a last-minute thing. So we actually had 8 agreed resolutions on the agenda. Not all of those are over a year old, but I think several more of them than just one were. The next slide, you've got a pie chart here, and this gives you an idea of the current fiscal year in terms of complaint resolutions. We've got a total of 95 cases resolved. And this slide, you actually have a handout that I've placed on your table there just to make a correction regarding dismissals. There was some errors in the individual totals under dismissals. We have 65 dismissals, so roughly 2/3 of the cases don't have any disciplinary action, and the breakdown of exactly what those are wasn't correct, so I've updated it there, and you can see the breakdown between straight dismissals, dismissals with a small warning letter, and then dismissals that are contingent on completing something like taking a class or mentorship. And then, of course, we had one non-jurisdictional case. Of the 95 cases, if you go to the next slide, you'll see we've got 30 disciplinary actions. The vast majority of those are agreed resolutions. And then we've had one case at SOA and one default situation. And you can also see there the recidivism rates. On the next slide gives you an idea of complaint sources, where they're coming from, and right now that's overwhelmingly from consumers, a lot of homeowner complaints. I think the next closest is complaints from AMCs. And then the next slide addresses complaints, how many people are getting a complaint versus how many are actually getting disciplined. And again, like you saw in the earlier slides, we have 26 individual licensees, if you will, that are actually being disciplined. That's a very small percentage of the total licensee population. Next slide gives you an idea of complaint intake and resolution. And you can see, of course, the historic trend after the financial crisis. We had quite a bit of a bubble, and as we worked through that backlog, those numbers came down, and now you can see that we're resolving more than are coming in. Of course, 2015 isn't complete yet, but you can see there the trends. The next slide is a similar picture, but this is by license type. So as you can see, the trend is downward in terms of incoming complaints. And my understanding, just from speaking with people and anecdotally, is that's the case across the nation. The next two slides relate to staff-initiated complaints. And you can see here this one is concerning staff-initiated complaints based purely on audits, experience audits, and that is a rather nominal amount. So that information is there. When it does occur, it tends to be towards the sponsors that typically bear more of the responsibility. Obviously, trainees, being new to the profession, are not going to naturally be as competent. The next slide is more information about staff-initiated complaints, and you can see the breakdown there. And that really concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns.
Thank you, Troy.
Madam Chair, if I might, Troy, I just want to commend staff again for the hard work, because the case resolution, I mean, that's awesome. Thank you for getting those numbers in line. And the transparency. We asked y'all, over the last 3 years, we have asked y'all for so many reports, but this really does help me, and I hope the other board members, to get a really good picture of what we're dealing with. Even with you going over the report and letting us know about the sponsor and trainee, the difference there and how y'all are looking at that and analyzing where do you put the focus on. So thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank you for the
work.
feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon, board members. Tony Slagle, Government Affairs. This is our, as the commissioner mentioned, our annual review of the demographics breakdown, and then a comparison with Texas license holders over with the national license holders. So if you look at the first chart, it gives you some breakdown in percentages by ethnicity, gender, and age. You can tell by looking at the graphs underneath that for ethnicity and gender, the numbers are fairly static over the time period. And this time period covers from what we determined to be the market peak, where there were the most license holders to the present. If you look at the age graph, however, it shows that the population of our license holders is getting older, and that less young people are applying to be license holders in the state. Any questions on that? If not, I'll go to the next.
And you did mention that that's pretty much consistent nationally?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that on the next one, because if you look at the next chart, well, in a minute I'll get to it. If you look at the next chart, it compares Texas numbers to an AI survey. We just got updated numbers for from that survey. I'd been using 2012 numbers over the last 2 years. This is from December of 2014. But if you look at these and you look at the graphical representation, it shows that Texas is slightly more ethnically diverse than the nation as a whole. And then if you go to the next chart, you will see that we are slightly more male. And then as you mentioned, Ms. Fontana, the national numbers bear out that the population of license holders is aging across the nation, but Texas is actually younger than the national numbers show. So, any questions on any of that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
I believe we're to agenda item number 14.
Madam Chair and board members, agenda item 14 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to Board Rule 153.24. This amendment has been proposed to correct a typographical error to align the rule with the board's statutory authority. And if you're looking for the one change in this rule, it appears at the bottom of page 124 of 173, the very last line in the left-hand column.
So it's not redlined?
No. The Texas Register adopted a new system for us, and we are able to download the amendments directly from them after they've been published, and so they no longer appear redlined in your materials when they are up for adoption. There were no comments received on the amendments as proposed. Staff recommends adopting the rule as published.
Thank you, Ms. Warman.
I move that, oh my gosh, I just lost my wordings. I move that staff is authorized on behalf of the board to submit for adoption amendments to 22 TAC 153.24, complaint processings without changes or to text as published in the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption.
A motion from Ms. Fontana.
Second the motion.
Second from Mr. Jeffries. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Takes us to agenda item number 15, discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC 153.1, definitions.
Madam Chair and board members, the amendments proposed to Rule 153.1 propose a definition of real estate appraisal experience. The Enforcement Committee has reviewed this proposed definition and recommends that the board propose the amendments as presented, with one slight change. If you note in your materials at page 131, there is a typographical error in the proposed amendment. The word significant should be capitalized to signify the start of the second sentence, and that should read significant real property appraisal experience as opposed to significant REAP property. Staff recommends proposing the amendments for publication as presented today.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Beard.
Move that staff is authorized on behalf of this board to submit amendments to 22 TAC, section 153.1, definitions as presented for publication and public comment to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Takes us to agenda item number 16, discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC 155.2, work relating to property tax protest.
Madam Chair and board members, the proposed amendments to Rule 155.2 would correct a typographical error to reflect the proper statutory reference. If you note in your materials at page 135, the statutory reference is being changed from Chapter 1151 of the Tax Code to Chapter 1151 of the Occupations Code. And a similar change is being made right below for Chapter 1152 of the Occupations Code. Staff recommends proposing the amendments for publication as presented.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jeffries.
I move that the staff is authorized on behalf of this board to submit amendments to 22 TAC 155.2, work relating to property tax protest, as presented for publication and public comment to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for the proposal.
Second.
A motion from Mr. Jeffries, a second from Ms. Fontana. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Agenda item number 17, discussion and possible action to propose amendments 22 TAC 159.204, complaint processing.
Madam Chair and board members, the proposed amendments to Rule 159.204 would implement a penalty matrix for complaints filed against an appraisal management company. These amendments mirror the penalty matrix structure in Board Rule 153.24 for individual appraisers. The AMC Advisory Committee has reviewed the proposed amendments and recommends the board propose the amendments as presented. Staff also recommends the board propose the amendments as presented.
Thank you. Mr. Black, do you have a motion?
Well, I certainly do, Madam Chair. We are on 17. All right, I move that staff is authorized on behalf of this board to submit amendments to 22 TAC 159.204, complaint processing as presented for publication and public comments to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Black, second by Ms. Fontana. Any discussion?
Actually, I do, Madam Chair. Again, I'd like to reiterate how much I appreciate staff's work on this particular thing. It is a lot of work. So thank you, staff.
And I echo that. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are to pending business, agenda item number 18, discussion and possible action on legislative matters.
Good afternoon again, Board. Tony Slagle, Government Affairs. I just wanted to give you guys a brief update on what's been happening. I don't know if, like you, I was watching everything till midnight last night. I get excited by this stuff. I don't know what to say. There's something wrong with me, I guess. But
The right job.
anyway, they're really, in terms of any significant impact on the agency, there are three bills that we've obviously been monitoring. One is the housekeeping bill. The Senate version has moved from the Senate. It has passed the House committee, and it's just waiting in the House to be heard by the full House. With everything that's been going on the past week and the deadlines for House bills, it's just been held up on that. There's not anything to be concerned about that moving forward as far as we know. The second would be the housekeeping bill on the commission side. Same status. It's gone through the Senate. It's gone through the House committee. It's also waiting. It's pending being heard by the full House. There is an SDSI bill, Senate Bill 217, which would place SDSI agencies that are currently granted that status, all under the SDSI Act. It would provide some uniformity in reporting requirements, give some oversight of those agencies by the LBB. It's passed the Senate. It has been referred to the House committee. It is yet to be heard there. The House version is heard, so as a matter of a process, they usually, once one version of the bill has been heard in one House, and they'll just switch them out. There are some differences, so there may be some discussion, but we're waiting for that on that bill. Other than that, most of the other bills we're monitoring are things that we just need to implement once the session's over with. HR issues, public information issues, things of that nature. Certain licensing, every year they update and change how occupational licensing entities process veterans applications in terms of giving preference. So those types of things, we're monitoring all those things, and those will be implemented once the session's over with and we have an idea of what's passed and been signed. But other than that, that's really it, short and sweet. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 19 is update on the new building plans.
Madam Chair, board members, I'd like you to insert in there, this is update on potential new building plans. So we do have, or we finally have received, and we received it at the very end of March, a compilation of documents from the Texas Facilities Commission, which constitute collectively the initial phase of their feasibility study. So that has been provided to our appointed liaison for the board is Board Member Padden, and also to Mr. Troy Alley for the commission. And the three of us will confer after this meeting. Everybody was preparing for 4 meetings, and so we did not have an opportunity to sit and confer and look at all of that and kind of tear it all apart. So we have the initial feasibility in hand, and we'll be meeting to determine what areas need additional work. And then I'm sure the members will task me to do certain things, and hopefully we'll have another update for you at the August meeting.
Thank you. Questions? Appreciate the update. Takes us to agenda item number 20, discussion regarding performance review and salary of the commissioner. I think the board participated in an evaluation of the commissioner and has received a report of recommendations that Trek has made regarding his performance that seem to me to be in alignment with the kinds of scores he got from our organization. So I would commend the good job, and unless there's any questions or conversation, anyone have any comments regarding that?
I'd just like to thank the commissioner for his work.
And echo that. Certainly we've had a long road, as has been described, and he's done a good job keeping us on task and keeping the ship afloat, so appreciate that. Let's go to agenda item number 21, the discussion and possible action regarding the draft TALCB 2016 budget. I don't see our newest member jumping up, so I guess the...
Madam Chair and board members, you have before you the draft which was discussed. Mr. Beard, chairing the Budget Committee, spoke about earlier, and I'm happy to, I just want to provide a few reminders about the process, a couple of insights into this first draft, and then answer any questions that you have. First of all, this is based on a projection, actual expenditures through the end of March, and then projected through August. You'll see that column there next to the, just to the left of the budget, which is the bold, the column in bold in the center. And we always give you 5 years worth of data on the budgets. And of course, the second, the two columns that I would draw your attention to are all the way on the right-hand side. So the second to last one shows differences between the proposed budget and the last year's approved budget. And then generally there's an explanation for that. So for example, in the salaries and wages column, it says we're requesting a 5% increase over fiscal year 15 actual. So it actually shows that that's a small, actually a slightly smaller number than was approved last year. But it's still a 5% over and above what we've actually anticipate spending. All of these numbers, of course, will be updated again per the policy through the end of June, and a draft will be done in July, sent out to the budget committee members, and if they have any concerns about it, it'll be much sharper numbers, if you will, much more accurate. Because of the short time frame left in the fiscal year. And we'll also have some better information, obviously, once we know what the legislature has done that has impact on all of us as state employees. So, for example, there's a proposal in the budget today to increase the contribution both by the agency and by the individuals towards their pensions, 2% on each side. And kind of as an offset, there's a adjustment across the board of 2.5% planned for September the 1st. So we will know whether that proposal as it currently exists, the budget is still under negotiation between the House and the Senate. So we don't know what's going to finally come out of that. But we anticipated that, and so you'll see a significant increase in the employee benefits line there. Other personnel costs slightly down. There's some very small other adjustments in there, but I would point you at about 5 rows up from the bottom. It says supplies and equipment, and it shows a negative $4,285. And it says PC refresh budget move to equipment lease. And then if you'll look up 5 more columns, like right in the middle, you'll see that there's an increase there of $4,234. So it's actually increased. It's a net cost savings, actually. We've determined when Steve Spiropoulos came on board, we actually went out for bid and got some proposals to deal with our technology rather than acquiring it and then maintaining it and acquiring the software for our computers as well, purchasing that, maintaining that we could actually save money and get much better service by leasing. And so we are moving to, in this budget, and we'll be implementing that on the Trek side this summer, to actually, instead of purchasing computers, we're going to lease them. And so a Dell team will come in, put in the computers fully loaded with all of the software that we need, and then they're responsible for maintaining them. And so we'll have a service agreement with them for that. And every 3 years, they will come take away the old one and put a brand new one in its place. And that actually saves us money and gives us a much better service option. And so that's some adjustments you'll see in the budget reflecting that. So overall, we're only asking for about $8,500 more than previous budgets, than last year's budget. And if you look at the income down below, the revenue side, license fees, slightly down from the budget, but slightly up from what we anticipated collecting this year. So we don't expect that to have giant fluctuations. The one area that I'd like to just remind you is that when you look at the AMC revenue, you have to look at 2 years side by side because it's heavily loaded into 1 year. So the even numbered year in this case is FY 2016, and then if you look at 2017, because the majority of our AMCs registered in FY 12. So we'll always see that front-loaded. If you look at the bottom of that section, you'll see, or below that, in the next section it says AMC revenue carry forward is an adjustment to equalize the funding between 2 fiscal years. So if you took the revenue anticipated in 2017 and subtracted it from what we get in 2016 and divide the remainder in half, we move half of it into next year. So we have the same amount of funding each year. And so this shows us a slight positive of a little over $20,000 would be the projection if all of those things came true. Which is slightly down from last year's projection, but you'll see that we're actually projecting or we're anticipating that we will have a much larger positive for FY15. And part of that is we didn't anticipate we didn't project any new AMCs, and we had 12. So the second page there is kind of the cash picture, if you will. So this is provided to remind you that under our policy, if you look at the kind of the center of that box, the third grouping down says projected cash balance August 31, 2015, about $959,000, which is about 6.8 months worth of expenses based on the FY16 budget, which is a reminder right there. That includes the Reserve for Long-Term Facilities Master Plan and the Educational Development. If you subtract those out, leaves you about $675,000, which is still 4.8 months, which is over our target. Our target is 3 to 4 months. And so you can anticipate that the final budget, if this continues to track true, that we will ask for some of that additional funds to be placed into reserves, out of the operating reserve and into one of your other reserves. And also note that the administrative penalties are dedicated to the education fund, the education reserve. Okay. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. This is draft 1.
I have a question, Madam Chair. Mr. Commissioner, we received a revised report about the AMC registrations, and with the 19 being expired, I'm assuming we've already captured that revenue for them. But has that been anticipated for the projection with those being gone?
We do. Our assumption, and I think it's there in the comments, we anticipate, so right now we have 183. So if you look at these numbers, it says 142 and 11. So that's 153. We never anticipate, we're trying to be very conservative, and we only anticipate that 90% of the AMCs will renew.
Okay.
And so, and last year, of course, we didn't project any new ones either. But now that they're in, we project that 90% of them will renew.
And then when we have the 11 new AMCs register, where is that, their panel fees that they have to pay for each panelist, where is that revenue?
It's included in the same column.
It's just inclusive of that total?
That is both their application fees, renewal fees, and panel registration fees.
Okay.
Is all included in that number.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. We are now to agenda item number 22, discussion and possible action to approve changes to the board order policy.
Madam Chair and board members, the Enforcement Committee has reviewed the policy on board orders and recommends changes to this policy to provide more flexibility to respondents to bring themselves back into compliance with the terms of their agreed orders. The proposed changes, as shown in your materials, would eliminate the option of probated suspensions and allow for automatic suspension of a license in the event a respondent fails to comply with the terms or conditions in an agreed order. These changes would allow the suspension to be lifted once a respondent provides proof of compliance with the missed term or condition. The staff recommends adopting the changes to the policy on board orders as presented, as does the Enforcement Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Warman.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Black.
I move the board adopt the changes to the policy on board orders as recommended by the Enforcement Committee.
A motion by Mr. Black, a second by Mr. Beard. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 23, discussion and possible action to approve new or changes to the TALCB forms for the application for registration as an AMC and the renewal of registration as an AMC.
Madam Chair and board members, the AMC Advisory Committee has reviewed these forms and recommends that the board adopt the proposed revision to collect the AMC DBA information. As you can see in the materials, question 2 is what is being added, the assumed business name or DBA, and it allows the AMC to provide that as is allowed in the board's rules. Staff recommends or is in concurrence with the AMC Advisory Committee's recommendation to adopt the revised forms as presented.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jeffries.
I move that staff is authorized on behalf of this board to revise the application for registration as an AMC and the renewal of registration as an AMC as recommended by the AMC Advisory Committee.
Second.
A motion and a second from Mr. Carlson. We'll give him credit this time, Mr. I'm sorry. No. Mr. Padden, sorry about that. By Mr. Padden. Any discussion?
I have one quick question. The amount of the application, $3,419. How do we come up with an odd number like that? It seemed like it'd be $3,450 or so the detail is on the next one. Okay. Okay.
So the breakdown is on the application?
I got you. Okay. Answers my question.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously, and thanks to the AMC Committee for working on that and staff for getting it moved forward. Agenda item number 24, request for potential future meeting agenda items. I have one quick consideration. I'd like us to consider taking up an amendment consideration on the appraisal log and maybe an assembly of some comments regarding confusion that we've seen recently regarding experience. So we may begin to develop some kind of a notification and education at certain education levels. So in our trainee class in the future, we may want to address some of those items. My goal would be that we get the information out so that those people making application to our organization don't find out after the fact that the log doesn't comply, but have been given adequate notice early on. So my observation has been there is some confusion about the way the log is laid out, and if there is a way for us to consider some revisions at some point in time, I do believe it's probably best addressed at a committee level and brought forth. I'm not sure if there's a strong feeling at one level or another, but maybe that it starts at enforcement passes through education and then gets to the board. Ultimately, I expect it will take us a bit of time. I'd also like to ask if staff and the board can begin just assembling some questions or issues that they have seen arise as it relates to confusion on the log and the experience credits.
And Madam Chair, I'd be glad to, as enforcement chairman, to take that on to our agenda and do the work. And I agree with you. I think whatever we can provide as much as the form, and then to pass it on to education to get their input for communication.
Madam Chair, I have an item that we might think about along the way. There is the property tax consultants, and Doug can help me with the board that oversees that. TDLR. I think it might be it would be nice if somehow we could have them informed of what it would take as a mass appraiser to become licensed in the state of Texas. Maybe a liaison to their board, or they on our board, or somehow we need to get them up to speed on if they apply for licensure as a mass appraiser, what are they, so they don't get to the end of the road and get denied.
I appreciate that. That sounds to me like something the executive committee could take up to begin to try and establish. Are there other ideas for potential future agenda items? Good input. Appreciate that. Hearing none at this moment, we'll move to the discussion of possible future meeting dates.
So members, if you will look at page 173, the next meeting is scheduled for Friday, August the 21st. And then the November meeting, the default date would be Friday, November the 19th. So that needs to be vetted to determine whether that's good.
20th?
Sorry, the 20th. I circled the wrong number. The 20th. And then, as I mentioned in my report earlier, February the 19th, ASC will be here the 17th through the 19th for their biennial visit, and so that we need to have a meeting on the 19th.
No, that's what we're trying to do. Is the question at the diocese, have we set the August meeting? And I think that's what we're trying to do.
And Madam Chair, I'd just like to make note that there's a 99% probability I will not be able to attend that meeting if we keep that date. However, I am prepared to make sure that any AMC committee information that needs to be reported on will be covered with some AMC committee members in presence. If that helps y'all decide. And then my enforcement committee members would be glad to take those reports.
Okay. So options are consider another date or
my absence.
Or your absence. And we appreciate the heads up. Is there, if you were to propose another date, do you have a recommendation, Ms. Fontana?
I will not be in town the 28th either, so I could do the 14th.
Do you have any idea, Commissioner, how applicable that would be at a staff level?
It shouldn't be a problem. The big variable for us is the availability of this room. And so we, as far out as possible, lock it down for the default dates, and then it's kind of a roll of the dice. Whether or not, if we move it, can we get that date? But we certainly will look and see if the 14th is available. If that works equally well for all other members.
I was just about to ask that.
Yeah.
Would everyone else look to see if that would be creating a conflict for you if we were to consider that?
No, either one, 14th or 21st works for me.
Then I'd ask that you do that, Commissioner, and just communicate with us electronically that if the 14th is available, let us know. If not, we will go to the default date.
Very good. Thank you.
The November date, anyone have any comment on it?
That's November 20th, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
It works for me.
Claire? Very good. Do you have the direction you need?
We certainly do.
Gosh, that takes us to agenda item number 26 at 12:45. I am very proud and appreciate everyone's diligence today to move us forward in a timely manner. We will consider this meeting adjourned.
Congratulations.